So in the last one, I mentioned more about a little bit of the hard way of rendering data from a view. And this one, we're going to start actually jumping into doing it the much easier way. And that is by writing it within an app using Django's shortcut called render. So in here, I'm going to come in and I'm going to talk about 4 different concepts that we really want to do. And that is called CRUD. So CRUD is this concept of create, update, retrieve, and delete. Or, well, create, retrieve, update, delete. So these are 4 different views that we're going to want to have for a lot of our apps. Now, there's another one that we might also want to have, which is called list. That is another kind of view that you would also have, but that often is inside of this retrieve. So I'll discuss these methods in just a second, but I just wanted to note that this is a very important concept when it comes to building web applications, and our views align with this concept because that's how our entire app is going to be built. So inside of models.py, I'm actually going to jump into our GitHub repositories. So I'm going to go to joincfe.com/GitHub, and it's going to take me to Coding for Entrepreneurs' GitHub page. We're going to go in the repositories, and we're going to go into Django Models Unleashed. Not Django Views, that's the one we're working on, and of course that is a reference in there for you. But Django Models Unleashed, I'm going to click on this. I'm going to go into SRC, I'm going to click on blog, I'm going to click on models, I'm going to go to raw, and I'm going to copy this entire thing, and I'm going to paste it inside of my models for my blog, copy the whole thing, paste it in. The only thing I'm going to get rid of is these validators, so I'm going to comment that out and then remove them where they exist, which is just down here, I believe. If any errors happen, we will definitely check those out in just a second. I'm not touching models. We talk about that in the models section itself for Django Models Unleashed. So I'm going to go ahead and save the models, and then in my settings file for Django Views, I'm going to go into settings and I'm going to add in my blog. So I'll do blog, and that's that. So I've created this app, and I'm going to do Python manage.py, make migrations, and then Python manage.py, migrate, and then I'll run the server. One other thing that I want to add is I want to add this model into the admin. So I'll do from.models, import, post. And we'll do admin.site.register, post. Now, why is it that we just copied some model and put it in here? Now, the reason for this is because in order for us to illustrate the concept of CRUD or CRUDL, then we have to have some data in our database to actually make that happen. Therefore, we introduced models and a way, or at least models in a way that allows us to work with some data. And then I added it to the admin so we can take a look at the admin. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that everything's saved up. And this is called the post model, not post. Let's try that again. Save that. There we go. And I'll make a super user here. So Python manage.py, create, and super user. And I'll just say CFE. Don't need to put an address in or an email address in, that is. And I'll put a password. And I created that super user. Let's run that server again. And now we're going to go into the admin to talk about CRUD a little bit. So going into the admin, we go to /admin here, log in, and we see that we have a list of things. So let's actually click on posts. So right here, this is called a list view. If I click on add post, this is called a create view. So let's go ahead and create a post. I'll just say new post or new content, whatever. And I'm going to make some data, and then I'll just hit save and continue, or actually more specifically save. I'll do it again. So we're going into post, let's just call it Tesla, whatever. And then I hit save. Doesn't really matter. So list view, this is a list view because we have listed out items. This is an add view because this is where we add those items. A update view is if I click on this, this is a retrieve and update view in one. So it retrieves the data and I can update the data too. Sometimes those things are together, sometimes they're not. We'll explain that once we go through the views. And then finally, there's something called a delete view. If I click on delete, it takes me to a URL to confirm that I actually want to delete it. That is a full view for delete. That doesn't always happen. But that is the CRUD. That's how CRUD works. So when we think about our views, our own custom views, we're going to be copying that same sort of concept. So we're going to go through create, retrieve, update, delete, and list. Now the easiest one by far is list. That method is by far the easiest one because it doesn't need us to have some sort of form, where update and create need a form to actually exist. In this one, we will actually create that basic form so you can see how it works within a view, but we have a full section on Django forms and form sets that you would want to consider looking at. So now that I've got this, I'm going to go ahead and make my list view. Now I'm going to do it first using that old stuff that we were doing. So I'm going to do from Django.http. We're going to import our HTTP response. I'm going to try it one more time. So I'm going to do define, and I'll call this post model list view. And it's going to take in requests like we've seen before, and then we're going to return an HTTP response, some data. Okay, so this is going to be our post model list view. To get a list, I have to create something called a query set. So I'll do from.models. I'm going to import that post model again, and I'll just do query set equals to post model.objects.all. So this is a list that returns a list known as a query set in Django. Again, this is something we talk about a lot more inside of the Django models section. So we've got this list. I'm going to go ahead and print out the query set. And we now have these URL, or we have a view created. So we actually need to create a URL specifically for it so we can see this in action, or so we can see that it works. So inside a blog, I'm going to make a new file in here, call it urls.py. And then I'm going to go ahead and just copy part of the other URLs into our new one. And I'm going to go ahead and comment out some of these things. And our views, we want to just import our post model list view here. And I'm going to get rid of this other stuff. I don't need admin. All I need to import is URL. And then now for our list view, I'm going to come in here and just do post model list view. And I'll change the name to list. Okay, so we've now created URLs specifically for our app. So I need to add those URLs into our actual blog, or I mean on our main configuration URLs. To do this, there's actually a working example right up here showed blog. That's the reason I'm including it in this particular method. So I'll just say include here because that's what it's saying to import. And then we add this URL in here and we paste it in blog, and there we go. So I'm going to add these commas after these lines, line 26 and 27, add those in. So now we have our actual blog URLs working. Now, I'll explain what this does in just a second, but you can also import the blog view itself. So if I did blog.views import, that we called it post, what do we even call it? So let's look at the view and just copy the name of it, and we can actually import it in here too, where we could do URL R, and we'd say like $posts, $, and then that post model view list. We could do something like that as well. But whenever you're doing these, if you want to import an entire URLs module, you do it this way. If you are just using that in particular view, we do it that way. So the reason I do this is so our app controls all URLs. Not our main configuration URLs, but our app does. And that makes it more robust in the sense that it's more reusable, which is definitely something we talk about when we create the model as well. We want it to be as reusable as possible, especially with something like blog, where you might reuse it in other projects, right? Something like that makes sense. So hopefully the way we routed this makes sense, but the actual parts in here, so these are called regular expressions, and that is how we actually map our URLs. We do have a guide for common regular expressions. So if you go to Coding for Entrepreneurs GitHub, into our guides, you will see that this common URL regular expression pattern, and if you click on this, it shows you the different patterns for version 1.10 and above. And then also we have right here, we have our actual patterns for Django version 1.8 and below. Okay, so now that we've got that out of the way, let's try this again and let's run the server. and we come back in here, refresh in the admin, that's fine. And if I go to blog, enter, I see that it goes some data. So this blog URL says include blog.urls. So it starts here, and then it finishes with whatever these URL patterns are. So if I change this to abc/ and refresh in here, the regular blog won't show me anything, but if I go to abc/, that will show me something. So that's adding that extra path in there. Okay, cool. So now that we've got that, as far as the list is concerned, I can go to my terminal and I see that I have listed out items. That's great, but that's not as far as I want to go. So now I'm going to leave it at this, and the next one will actually use this shortcut called render. But in order for us to do that, we have to introduce a couple concepts that we want to leave for its own video. If you have any questions on what we did here, let us know. Otherwise, let's keep going.